One of my favorite parts about Fire Emblem Engage is the amount of effort and attention to detail over the graphics. More than anything though, with Blazing Sword being the first game I've ever played in the series, it's the animations. Fire Emblem Engage feels like they took 7 and 8 and said, hold my beer. But as I've learned through today's video, there's a lot of really cool programming under the hood that all contributes to Engage's visual quality and the identity IS wanted to have with this game. And a few weeks ago, the Engage devs sat down to talk about a bunch of different programs, tricks, and optimizations they made use of to get the game to look and run the way it did. There's a lot of technical jargon in this interview that I chose not to include because I figured the visual buffs and the game developers potentially watching would have a far greater understanding of that than I would, and, feel free to look at the article yourself. This video covers parts of the interview that I found the most interesting, while also being the most understandable, and is generally just about what I think of some of the choices they made. With the intros out of the way, let's take a look. Ramping up the visual quality. Due to Engage being the second FE entry on the Switch, a ton of focus was put into its visual quality compared to the previous game, Three Houses. In this respect, Takafumi Teraoka, the art director, commented, "Above anything else, the characters should look appealing. Our concept is to give them looks that have a sense of real existence to them, a sense that the characters firmly exist with the game's world." Unlike past entries, Engage was developed in the Unity engine rather than a custom one built in-house, and it started with a few developers experimenting with it early on before jumping onto full-scale development. As for making the 3D models, IS credits the tools Maya, Adobe Substance 3D for effects, ZBrush for texturing, and Shuriken for special particle systems. 3D graphics in particular were more important than ever in Engage, as all artwork traditionally displayed by 2D art in status screens for the past entries was replaced by 3D models that had to look good upon closer inspection. Mika Picasso. Because one of the big aims with the visual identity of Engage was to create a charming and lively look, the developers chose Mika Picasso as the character designer due to her use of highly saturated yet vivid colors in her artwork. And even though it's well known by now that she worked on the character design of Engage's cast, when it came to designing emblems themselves, interestingly, it's mentioned that her only contribution were their faces. It's also noted in the interview that the characters' irises were designed separately, mainly through analyzing Picasso's work and breaking it down into pieces for the sake of keeping their overall style consistent. For comparison's sake, Three Houses' eyes was basically the same image with different eye color. With Engage though, many characters' eyes are differently drawn and rendered. They also showed a lot of behind the scenes stuff, like how the characters' outlines were created and how they implemented a system to visualize eyebrows to be superimposed over their hair when they wanted characters with bangs to remain expressive, and how the textures of outfits can showcase more or less detail depending on the lighting. It's interesting reading the smaller things they did to make the game have great visuals that when you take it all in at once, in the moment, you don't really think about it. Like, yeah, I guess the armor does look more polished because the lighting was so much better in this game. Or, I never noticed how different everyone's eyes actually were. When you experience the game itself, there are a lot of roles you wouldn't expect or think are being played that do in fact make the experience that much better on the eyes. 3D character rigging. As for the animations themselves, the interview cites two kinds: motion capture, which were used for story conversations and cutscenes, and hand-drawn, employed for battle for the sake of making combat as visually attractive as possible. Motion capture is used for events or cutscenes, but apart from that, motion in combat and the like was entirely made by hand. Mr. Teraoka says, "When I thought about how to make the characters look appealing, I figured that true-to-life motion would be the wrong approach because of the visual pop in their colors and models. As this game features some superhuman movement, I decided at the start of development we would animate by hand, so I could feel safe going forward with a method I was familiar with. The basis for battle animations came in the form of written instructions, while things like Engage attacks had special production and used storyboards." In the above image, the grids say, title, Twin Strike. Number 1, overhead camera, skilled user running in a forward bent posture, holding blade in right hand. 2, pull camera out and slightly to the right side, diagonally from behind Ephraim's run-in. Floating movement. 3, Ephraim jumps out to the front. 4, Ephraim slides in, spear at the ready. 5, horizontal swing, attack effects fly forward. 6, skill user flies in from behind Ephraim.
If this is war, so be it. I still have a lot to learn.
Here are some other tidbits of cool trivia about the animations. Movements of characters during combat can change due to an insane amount of factors that's often not noticed by many players, such as body type, class, level, and even evasion chances, which can often be a big difference between a character dodging an attack versus them parrying it to achieve the same effect. Characters during development were split in groups during modeling/animation depending on the types of things they would wear or have naturally, mainly to ensure the developers kept in mind that those extra details, like capes and longer hair, would need to be animated as well to avoid clipping, which was done through giving these bonus details their own bones for animation and rigging purposes. Incidentally, it's mentioned Zephia's model was a pain to animate in battle for this reason, and you can see why. Map design. Map design in Engage was created through the following steps. Number 1, the art team proposes a sketch showcasing the overall outline of the map. Number 2, the 3D modelers take the sketch and create a primitive mock-up of it highlighting its components. Number 3, concept art is built on the map with various specific color combinations and lighting in mind, giving each one its own identity. Number 4, and with all that, work is then put to make the map look as closely as possible to the concept artwork. I just personally love reading about this process in particular. Engage's map design and aesthetics were a huge highlight for the gameplay experience. Lots of maps were straight up gorgeous to look at, and it's really cool that they were designed with specific color combinations. I do think it's really cool. And I do wish they shared more concept artwork of all the maps. Maybe they did in the art book and I just don't know. On a related note, according to the developers, the Somniel is one giant model whose parts are shown or hidden from the player depending on their location and camera, a process which reportedly required a lot of tweaking to get working right. Cutscenes. Finally, beside the scenes being outsourced to Studio Anima, Engage uses two types of cutscenes in the game. Pre-rendered cutscenes that use motion capture, made through collaborations with external teams to handle storyboarding, as well as the lighting used and the special effects present. Meanwhile, the normal story events were done in-house using the CRI lip sync software to make the characters talk when needed. Three Houses, in fact, did this too. The article ends there. Now, I'm not a very technical guy, but nonetheless, Engage's visual presentation and intricacies to make it all work is very, very interesting. There is certainly a lot working under the hood to get this game to look as visually appealing as it does. There were some parts of the interview I left out, mainly the ones that get into the nitty-gritty and are loaded with technical jargon, but I've always been a fan of the "this is how the sausage gets made" type of trivia. I really liked how cinematic the Engage attacks actually are, now that I know that they were literally storyboarded. But yeah, if you're big into the Unity engine, and I know some of y'all are game designers and are willing to wrestle with some of the machine translation wonkiness, then you should take a read of the article yourself. Reading this article and taking a look at Fire Emblem's Unity engine, all the graphical enhancements, the efficiency and optimization of it, and an incredible return to form in its sprite work and animations is an extremely positive sign for the series. Intelligent Systems should not move backwards from what Engage accomplished. Keeping with this engine allows for the next Fire Emblem game to maintain the standard Engage has set. Fire Emblem has been rather inconsistent with presentation and optimization of its programming and engine. There is so much potential though for this Unity one to carry the series, especially for the next Nintendo console. Before Engage, there was a worry that the next game would be developed by Koei again, but now the expectation will be using this as a base and that the success of their work here will be carried through to the next gen. And that will do it for today's video. A little short one to start off the new year, but as always, please leave a like and comment down below, as both of those things do help boost this video in other people's recommended tab. Anyways, thanks for watching. Deuces.